Continuing, the Honourable Member for Renfrew, Nipissing, Pembroke.
Mr. Chairman, honourable members, it's a pleasure to address the committee to speak to the need for continued investment in the well-being of Canadian Forces members, their families, and our veterans. As the Member of Parliament for Renfrew, Nipissing, Pembroke, I represent one of the busiest bases in the country, CFB Petawawa, training ground of the Warriors. The women and men of the Canadian Forces do extraordinary work in defending Canada and Canadians at home and abroad, and their operational track record over the past decade is testament to that fact. But, Mr. Chair, we all know that delivering this kind of sustained operational excellence does not come easily. It's only possible because of the professionalism, dedication, and sense of duty of our military personnel, and because they accept hardships, the sacrifices, and the stresses that come with serving in uniform. Of course, we do everything we can to ensure the safety of CF members and the performance of their missions, but no matter how well trained they are, no matter how well equipped they may be, there will always be risks involved with military personnel. And that's why we also have a responsibility to provide them and the families who support them and depend upon them with the care and support they need throughout their career and beyond. Mr. Chair, I'm proud to be part of a government that makes our brave women and men in uniform one of its top priorities. As stated in the Canada First Defence Strategy, unveiled in 2008, personnel are one of the 4 essential pillars upon which we build our military capabilities. Since coming to office in 2006, this government has taken steps to improve the care we provide to our personnel, their families, and veterans. Our approach is premised on the belief that in order to treat our ill, injured, and wounded personnel effectively, we must coordinate our efforts, from recovery to rehabilitation and reintegration. Of course, for this comprehensive approach to be successful, we need to ensure that our troops, our veterans, and their families can easily access services. That's why we set up the Joint Personnel Support Unit in 2009. The JPSU, a one-stop service to ill and injured military personnel and their families through a network of 24 integrated personnel support centres on bases and wings across Canada. These centres provide much of the needed services to our military families wherever they're located, by helping our ill and injured along the path for recovery and providing access to rehabilitation programs to aid in the transition to the next phase of their lives. IPSCs ensure that our troops and their loved ones have access to the same high standard of care and support across Canada. But, Mr. Chair, we also recognize that we need more than infrastructure to care for our personnel and their families. Our troops, their families, and our veterans face situations that are often very complex and unique to military life. They need programs and initiatives that address these specific needs. This is especially true of those who are ill or who've been injured or wounded. One of the first initiatives to be launched was Soldier On in 2006. Just this past weekend, Calabogie Peaks Resort hosted Ride the Valley for Soldier On. Canadian Army veteran motorcycle units from across Ontario participated. This is a great program. It helps the recovery of our ill and injured CF personnel by providing them with the opportunities to maintain a healthy and active lifestyle through sport. This past February, Calabogie Ski Resort hosted a winter sports clinic teaching the ill and injured how to ski, and in February of 2013 they'll be doing the same. And in the same vein, we also introduced the Computer Assisted Rehabilitation Environment System, or CAREN system, last year. CAREN is an advanced system that uses virtual reality software to help rehabilitate injured CF members more quickly and effectively. to offer more comprehensive support, not only to our ill and injured Canadian Forces members, but also to the family members who accompany them through the rehabilitation, we launched the Legacy of Care program in 2010. Legacy of Care is designed to facilitate access to a broad range of services, such as adapted accommodation throughout the recovery process, or financial and educational assistance for family members. Also, to provide better financial assistance to military personnel with disabilities, the Minister of National Defence announced just last month that the government is increasing the funding for Service Income Security Insurance Plan, or SISIP, long-term disability program by $113 million. And of course, Mr. Chair, this government recognizes that mental health is just as important as physical health. That's why we've also set up programs and initiatives specifically designed to address psychological or emotional issues, including operational stress injuries. To improve treatment for our personnel dealing with these problems, over 200 mental health practitioners have been hired in recent years through the Canadian Forces Mental Health Initiative. The CF also launched the Be the Difference, a mental health awareness campaign that aims to build a culture of understanding for mental health issues within the Canadian Forces. Because of the great efforts we've made over recent years to address mental health issues, Canada has become a world leader in fighting the stigmatization of post-traumatic stress disorder and other operational stress injuries. I was pleased to learn that CFB Petawawa will soon have 2 psychologists working on the base, providing services to our CF members closer to their homes. But, Mr. Chair, this government recognizes that it's not enough to care for our ill, injured, and wounded CF members. We must also care for their families. They courageously accept the risks, the burdens, and the sacrifices that come with this service. We can never repay extraordinary service and any sacrifice our military families make, but we can work to improve their well-being. That is what this government has done since taking office. In 2007, we set up the Military Families Fund. This wonderful initiative provides our military families in need with short or long-term support, such as emergency financial assistance or educational opportunities. We've also introduced various resources: family liaison officers, the familyforces.ca website, and the family information line to easily link the families of our women and men in uniform with the information and services that they need. And of course, Mr. Chair, we've not and cannot forget about the families of the fallen. For them, we introduced the Shoulder to Shoulder initiative in 2011. This program helps the families of our fallen deal with the tragedy of their loss by providing them with the services of counselors and therapists, and by connecting them with volunteers who've lived through similar experiences. Mr. Chair, after a decade of high operational tempo, the CF is now shifting its focus towards building the force of tomorrow, a force capable of meeting the challenges of an evolving and unpredictable security environment. But we always remember that the foundation upon which we build this future force is our women and men in uniforms and their families. They are without a doubt our most precious asset. That's why our approach to care is comprehensive, starting with the service and extending to the military families, the military life, and life after the service. We've outlined this integrated approach in a newly released publication called Caring for Our Own. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
The Honourable Minister of Defence.
Question. Minister, in your opening remarks, you referenced the great work done by the Royal Canadian Air Force the Royal Canadian Navy, the Canadian Army. Minister, in the 1990s, they represented particularly a dark time for Canadian forces as they were put in difficult circumstances, ill-equipped, and ill-prepared, undoubtedly impacting troop morale. Now, since forming government in 2006, we've not only invested in the Canadian forces through equipment and training, but have also implemented initiatives that seek to reconnect them with their proud history. Can the Minister of Defence inform this Committee of the Whole the initiatives his department has undertaken to reconnect our Canadian forces with their proud history and traditions?
The Honourable Minister of National Defence.
The answer to your question, of course, we reinstated the names for the Royal Canadian Air Force, Royal Canadian Navy. This was very well received by veterans and serving members alike. We also brought back the importance operationally, but also for the Canadian Forces, Joint Task Force 2, which really is the successor Special Forces of the Airborne Regiment, which was disbanded, of course, by the previous Liberal government. We also know that in 1968, those royal designations were stripped away along with the individual uniforms, the individual identities of Canadian forces. But I do want to come back and commend the honourable member. I know she's extremely proud of the men and women at Canadian Forces Base Petawawa. The member from Renfrew, Nipissing, Pembroke is an ardent supporter of the men and women in uniform and their families. And, Mr. Speaker, I also would take this opportunity to express appreciation to not only the families, but one family member in particular, and that is Leslie Natinchuk, who is the wife of the Chief of Defence Staff. Mr. Speaker, she was recently recognized with the Queen's Diamond Jubilee for her incredible work in supporting wounded members, ill and injured, and their families. She is an outstanding Canadian, as is her husband, Mr. Chair, and we are very, very proud of her work and contribution, in addition to what General Natinchuk does for the men and women.
The Honourable Member for Renfrew, Nipissing, Pembroke.
To the Minister of National Defence, over the past year, the Department of National Defence has entered several memorandums of understanding with other nations to build upon relations between the host nation and Canada. Now, such partnerships offer not only the Canadian forces, but the Canadian population in general, cost-effective measures to provide logistical support to our forces. I'm referring specifically to the partnership forged with the government of Germany. Can the Minister please provide this Committee of the Whole with more information about how those arrangements are made and why it's so important to have partnerships of this nature?
The Honourable Minister of National Defence.
Specifically, in April of 2009, the Canadian Forces established a proof of concept hub in Spangalen, Germany. This was done on May the 13th, 2010. The Canadian Chief of Defence Staff ordered the establishment of 7 operational support hubs worldwide to enable enhanced logistics, reinforcement of international missions. And this is an important step being taken, Mr. Chair, by the Canadian Forces. The engagements, the dialogue with host nations are progressing. We continue to develop appropriate instruments to establish the operational support hubs worldwide. The engagements and dialogue with host nations, Mr. Chair, will allow us to have these operational hubs, which we feel are very important in a volatile and changing world. On the 14th of February of this year, the German Defence Minister and I announced the move of the European Operational Support Hub to Cologne-Bonn Airport. This initiative is about supporting funds more effectively, ensuring that this network of hubs is going to be there and available for us. It often involves simply using a corner of an airfield, a hangar, for storage purposes, but will allow Canadian forces to improve their operational capability, to get where they need to be quickly, Mr. Chair, to respond to, as I said, challenges, flare-ups that can occur, as we've seen in places around the world. This is very much about the Canadian forces having a footprint in places and regions where we know that very much Canadians will be able to play an important role, where the world is looking to Canada to do more, and we are ready to shoulder that load. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Resuming debate, the next